Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time to review the 4th solo LP by Jack White of The White Stripes, The Dead Weather, The Raconteurs, various other musical projects. He's one of my favorite artists, and one of my favorite guitarists as well, and I have so much respect and enthusiasm for the majority of the material he's put out, but his solo stuff, while I do have love for specific tracks, and even that debut album Blunderbuss being one of my favorites of the 2010s, not everything is panned out, at least not in full, so I had my fingers crossed going into this new LP, Fear of the Dawn, but I wasn't holding my breath expecting perfection. I guess you could say I was really taken back by the lead single that came out last fall. I enjoy the track so much, and even its association with the Call of Duty franchise didn't really bother me all that much because I feel that Taking Me Back is one of his most powerful singles he's unleashed in a while. Having spent some time in Jack's new reinvented world that sees him trying to rebuild what already existed from the ground up but with a new perspective, I have to say that I'm definitely looking forward to that acoustic or else stripped back LP a little bit more, because this feels like a bizarro science experiment where almost every single song has great ideas in there. It's just that he keeps adding things to the mix and eventually the beaker bursts. At the very least, even with the songs off of Boarding House that I didn't fully mesh with and I didn't find myself drawn to and coming back to, at least not a ton, I could at least respect the fact that it felt like they were coming from an authentic place where the inspiration was taking it as far as the mind can go. And while maybe that is the inspiration yet again here for Fear of the Dawn, it's much more all over the place, scattered, and it just at the same time feels like an extended run-on sentence. That probably doesn't make a ton of sense, but to take it back to the science experiment analogy, I feel like Jack continuously fills these tracks up to the brim with a lot of great elements that sound killer, whether it be the guitars, or maybe an organ creeps up, or maybe he's even sampling something, which he's doing for the first time ever on this record. I also feel that the other elements, like maybe an out-of-place drum rhythm, or something that's just a little bit too bizarro, almost borderline dubstep with some of the synthesized stuff he does, or maybe it's even a guitar pedal modulation that just goes overboard on the effects, it can be overload and your brain almost can't process it. And I don't think it's one of those things like, oh, I just haven't heard the album enough yet. It's just too much going on all at once, and I'm feeling that more and more from a lot of modern music where we just have too many options. There's too many things that could be put into these songs, and sometimes it sacrifices the overall quality. Before I air some grievances with specific songs that I don't really think work, or maybe the overall finesse just not quite being there for the overall flow of the track list, I wanted to show some praise and some of the things that do work about Fear of the Dawn. That title track is definitely a stunner. It feels like a cross between Wolfmother, Jack White, The White Stripes, and Biffy Clyro. It's an explosion in just over 2 minutes, but it truly does make a statement heard, especially with Jack's guitar. It comes just after Taking Me Back, which opens the album, and as I mentioned, I think this works really well not just as a single, but as an energy setter to actually open up the LP. Those ridiculously over-the-top, lavish, but lovable solos that pop up on the first 2 tracks are not really indicative of the overall vibe and mood of this record. It's an album that takes its time, and again, can feel very samey. It's most notable in the middle lull of this LP, and it can drag the entire experience down because you kind of get it in your head like, am I still listening to the same song, or did we switch? The worst experience here has to be Into the Twilight, a song that is so monotonous with that dull, processed, tin can sounding snare drum. It's something that I noticed on Taking Me Back, but it didn't take me out of the experience. It pops up a lot on this album, and that kinda to me spells a lot out about what Jack was doing with over-processing, perhaps overthinking these tracks, as he's much more digital in terms of how he went about making Fear of the Dawn, and it really shows up with some of the looping that's done on that track in particular. It's a shame because Into the Twilight does have some cool keyboard parts, and I enjoy some of the guitars that are kind of fuzzy cropping up here and there, but the overall experience and message just feels like it's sinking in quicksand. If we want to talk about Jack White becoming more of a sampler for the first time in his career, then we have to talk about Heidi Ho featuring Q-Tip, and I think he's probably the best part about this track, and I do really like a lot of the expansive ideas. The bass is just bursting with life in places, and the scuzzy guitars sound nice overlaid on top, but once again, it's like overstuffing the turkey. There is so much going on here, you can't really predict where the track is gonna go, and at first I kind of thought it was cool, and with repeated listens, I just feel baffled at the fact that I do like so much of it, but I also dislike it at the same time. To bounce back to some more of the positives, I really think That Was Then, This Is Now is one of the album's landmark moments. It definitely sounds like Jack White. It has a bit more of that bluesy play, not that this album doesn't have that going on, but it's dialed up a bit more here. That Was Then, This Is Now is very loose and jangly, something that I also see pieces of in Morning, Noon, and Night, which is possibly my favorite song on the entire album. Perhaps A Broken Clock is right 3 times a day, because Morning, Noon, and Night is just an incredible arrangement, something that I think is probably one of his best solo offerings yet. It's something that takes you back to the early days of the White Stripes and other parts of his solo career while still thinking forward at the same time. Jack's vocal soars like an eagle, as this song is just so calm, it knows exactly what it wants to be, which is something that I didn't detect with a lot of its peers surrounding it. Lots of love also goes out to Shedding My Velvet, which is the album closer. I appreciate this for being so honest and vulnerable. It feels like we're a fly on the wall that's looking into a moment of introspection as Jack is going through this metamorphosis, and he's taking us along for the journey, and he leaves us with one stinging word of advice, and I love the way that line just closes out the entire LP. In between, there's other highs and lows. I enjoy Eosophobia, but the Reprise feels like it goes a bit overboard and doesn't really add anything to the record, and I also do find some troubling elements in The White Raven, especially that kind of crunching, overly processed, borderline dubstep break. Fear of the Dawn is like a slow-burning brain freeze, and you want to eat the treat that's giving you the brain freeze. It's not that you want to avoid this, you just don't want that feeling afterwards. And I find myself wanting to look at Jack and say, can we please make this more tight or more succinct? And I know that's the antithesis of the idea behind this, but at the end of the day, I just find myself a little bit confused and disappointed. I'm gonna give this LP, Fear of the Dawn, a 3 out of 5. What did you guys think about the first new Jack White solo album in 4 years? Let me know in the comments section. Please hit that like button, and remember, this is all just my opinion. I'm still looking forward to Entering Heaven Alive, and I really did enjoy the Love Is Selfish single from that one. If you want to see me talk about Jack even more than tap the cards on screen, subscribe, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.